I'm really happy, and this red is really nice color.
On Saturday, the 2026 Vuelta a España began somewhere it never had before, in Monaco, with a 9.4-kilometer Stage 1 time trial through streets built for a different kind of race entirely. Joshua Tarling arrived as the rider most people expected to win it. He also arrived 7 days after burying his younger brother Finlay, who died in a road accident during the Tour of Portugal. Joshua chose to start anyway. What followed became one of the strangest opening days a Grand Tour has produced in years, and by the end of it, the story belonged to almost everyone except the man it was supposed to belong to. 3 weeks from now, this race finishes in Granada, but it was Monaco that set the tone for everything ahead. If you want every stage of this Vuelta covered as it happens, hit subscribe, because you're exactly who these videos are made for. Someone who wants the full picture for the next 3 weeks, the results, the storylines, and the analysis behind them, not just the highlights. Tarling is 22 years old. He already holds a European Elite Time Trial title, and last year he won a Grand Tour stage against the clock at the Giro d'Italia, his first taste of exactly this kind of afternoon. Ineos Grenadiers built their entire Vuelta approach around that resume, freeing him to ride Monaco purely for himself, while teammate Oscar Onley focused on limiting time to the general classification favorites. Every preview written in the days before the stage named Tarling as the man to beat, ahead of Wout van Aert, ahead of Ethan Hayter, ahead of Tadej Pogačar himself, the UAE Team Emirates leader and 5-time Tour de France champion who had made this Vuelta his singular target of the season. His combination of raw, sustained power and the technical sharpness this course demanded gave him, on paper, the strongest case of anyone in the field. None of that explains why he was still racing at all. Finlay Tarling died the week before at the Tour of Portugal, when a vehicle came onto the course toward the riders mid-stage. Joshua's presence at the start line in Monaco was, by every account from people who cover this sport for a living, already remarkable before a single pedal turned, a rider standing on a start ramp built for celebration, while carrying something no result was ever going to fix. Whatever he produced over the following 3 weeks was going to be read through that loss, whether he wanted it that way or not. And on Saturday, he decided to answer the only way a bike racer really can, by going as fast as the course allowed. The course itself is short and mean, 9.4 kilometers, starting outside the Casino de Monte Carlo, threading sections of the Monaco Grand Prix circuit past Larvado Beach, Port Hercule, and Stade Louis II, before finishing on Boulevard Albert I. It rewards raw power on the opening straights and punishes hesitation everywhere else. 25 turns and several tunnels packed into a route better suited to a rally stage than a bike race. Rain had fallen over Monaco on the 2 days before the stage, but race day itself stayed dry and warm, close to 27 degrees, with barely any wind to complicate the calculations riders had already made about where to brake and where to hold their nerve. Riders left the ramp one at a time, 1 minute apart, for more than 3 hours, working through the field toward the late afternoon block that held every rider who actually mattered to the outcome. Not everyone got a clean run at it. Bruno Armeret, a 3-time French time trial champion who had a real case for a top result, suffered a mechanical partway through and had to change bikes, his afternoon effectively over before the technical second half even began. It's the kind of detail that gets a single line in most reports and then disappears, but it's a reminder that a course this technical doesn't just separate the strong from the weak, it separates the lucky from the unlucky, and on a 9-minute test, there's no time left to recover from either.
Still, you race on your home roads, and you know it super well, so I think this helped me a lot today.
Tarling went off in the mid-afternoon, well ahead of the biggest names on the start list. He beat the early provisional best, set by Callum Thornley, a rider on his first Grand Tour, representing Q36.5 Pro Cycling, and took over the hot seat by a comfortable margin. For a stretch of the afternoon, the fastest man in this year's Vuelta a España was the one nearly everyone had picked to be fastest, riding a week after the worst news of his life, and still finding a time nobody else on the road could touch. It didn't last, but for those minutes, it looked exactly like it should have. Ethan Hayter started at 18 minutes past 6 in the evening, local time. The British time trial champion has won 5 time trials since the start of 2024 and took his 4th national title back in June, a specialist whose entire season had been built around days like this one. On this course, he rode the best time trial of his career, averaging close to 52 kilometers per hour through a course that punished every hesitation. He went through the intermediate checkpoint 3 seconds quicker than Tarling's split, then extended that through the technical second half, crossing the line in 10 minutes and 57.23 seconds, the first rider all day to break 11 minutes. Tarling's provisional lead was gone, taken not by one of the sport's biggest stars, but by another specialist who simply rode better. Tarling would finish third, 4.19 seconds back, his own near miracle overtaken by someone else's. Hayter sat in the hot seat and waited. Wout van Aert came through 9 seconds slower and couldn't touch it. Mads Pedersen lost 16. One by one, the rest of the field, sprinters and climbers alike, filed past Hayter's number without getting close, and somewhere in the middle of that wait, it must have felt like his. A time trial champion, on a course built for exactly his skill set, sitting on the fastest time of the day, with fewer and fewer riders left who could realistically beat it. Only 2 men remained on the start ramp. Tadej Pogačar started at 19 minutes past 6, 1 minute ahead of Primož Roglič in the very last group of the day. He lives in Monaco. These are, more or less, his roads, the streets he trains on when he isn't racing anywhere else in the world. At the intermediate check, he was somewhere between 2 and 3 seconds down on Hayter's split, depending on which timing feed you trust. A deficit that would have been unremarkable for most riders, and mildly alarming for a 5-time Tour de France champion opening his long-awaited Vuelta return. Then he found the rest of it in the technical second half, the corners and the braking zones, and the short, sharp accelerations this course was built around, and he crossed the line 9/100ths of a second faster than Hayter. 10 minutes, 57 seconds, and 0.09. That's the entire margin. A blink lasts longer than that. Van Aert had been 3.61 seconds down at that same intermediate point. Pedersen 5.21, Roglič 7.92. The Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe leader racing back from a training crash that had put his entire build-up in doubt. And none of it mattered once the clock stopped on Pogačar's actual finish. The margin over Hayter was the only number from the entire afternoon that ended up meaning anything. Local crowds had gathered along the finish straight all evening, plenty of them there specifically for the rider who grew up racing these roads long before any of it meant a red jersey. When Pogačar came through the final corner, still needing something from nowhere, the noise on Boulevard Albert I did most of the talking, before the clock confirmed it. It's a weird feeling to win the time trial on the first stage and by such a small margin, Pogačar said afterward. I was not expecting it. He wasn't lying about the surprise, even if the result fit a pattern people who follow him closely have started to expect anyway. A rider who has made a habit lately of finding time in exactly the stretch of road where nobody thought there was any left to find. Behind that top 2, the day kept its shape. Tarling held third, 4.19 seconds back, a result that on any other afternoon would have been the headline of the stage. A Grand Tour podium finish 1 week removed from the worst thing that can happen to a person. Thornley finished fourth on his Grand Tour debut, 5.41 seconds down. Christophe Laporte took fifth. Van Aert settled for eighth, roughly 9.5 seconds off the pace. Primož Roglič, a 4-time Vuelta champion, racing back from a training crash that had put his entire build-up in doubt, crossed the line 22 seconds behind Pogačar, a result that told its own quieter story about a former winner just trying to get through day 1 intact, rather than make a statement. For the first time in the race's 81-year history, the Vuelta started outside Spain in Monaco, which means the Principality has now hosted the opening of every Grand Tour there is. Pogačar hadn't raced a Vuelta since 2019, when he turned up as an unknown 20-year-old and left 3 weeks later with 3 stage wins and third overall, the first real sign of what was coming for the rest of the sport. In the years since, Sepp Kuss claimed the 2023 edition for Team Visma, Jonas Vingegaard won in 2025, and now the race has Pogačar back as the heaviest favorite it has had in a generation. 7 years after that first Vuelta, the UAE Team Emirates leader is chasing the one Grand Tour still missing from a resume that already has almost everything else on it. Win in Granada in 3 weeks, and he becomes only the 9th man in the sport's history to hold all 3 Grand Tour titles across a career, before turning his attention to the World Championships in Canada.
For Josh as well, and then I come to intermediate and I hear a different name.
The general classification sits tight after one stage, close enough that 10 bonus seconds on offer at Sunday's finish could reshuffle the top of it entirely, and there are riders within a handful of seconds of Pogačar who have no intention of letting Monaco's result stand as the last word. But stage 1 didn't end up being about the general classification. It ended up being about a rider who was supposed to win and didn't, twice over. Tarling starts stage 2 third on a day he was favored to win, carrying grief that a bike race was never going to fix either way, while Hayter starts it having ridden the best time trial of his life with exactly nothing to show for it in the only column that gets remembered. Pogačar rides into Sunday in red, on a course he didn't strictly need to force, in a margin nobody watching that finish line expected to still be talking about hours later. If you want more of this, the actual texture of a stage result, and not just the number next to a name, stick around and subscribe, because that's what keeps these breakdowns coming for the races still ahead of us this September.